There are places on Earth where history decided to happen, where the geography, the timing, and the decisions of men converged in a single moment of such violence and consequence that the world that emerged from it was fundamentally different from the one that entered. Prokhorovka is one of those places. On July 12, 1943, a flat, unremarkable stretch of agricultural steppe in southern Russia, wheat fields, sunflower crops, a shallow river called the Sel, a single railway line running south, became the stage for the largest tank engagement in the history of warfare. In the space of a few hours, on a front barely 8 kilometers wide, roughly 1,500 armored vehicles collided in a battle so intense, so chaotic, and so costly that survivors struggled for the rest of their lives to describe what they had witnessed. The battle did not come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of a week of brutal fighting during Operation Citadel, Hitler's last great offensive on the Eastern Front, his attempt to pinch off the Kursk salient and destroy the Soviet forces inside it. By July 11th, the II SS Panzer Corps, the elite armored spearhead of the southern German attack, had punched deeper than any other formation. They stood on the threshold of a breakthrough. One more push, and the road through Prokhorovka might open. The Soviets knew it, and they had an answer ready. It was the 5th Guards Tank Army, and it was already moving. To understand Prokhorovka, you must understand the week that preceded it. Operation Citadel launched on July 5, 1943, with the largest concentration of German armor ever assembled for a single offensive. In the south, General Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzer Army, spearheaded by the II SS Panzer Corps under SS Obergruppenführer Paul Hauser, struck the Soviet defensive lines with extraordinary violence. The 3 SS divisions of Hauser's corps were the finest armored formations the Third Reich possessed. The 1st SS Panzer Grenadier Division Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, the 2nd SS Panzer Grenadier Division Das Reich, the 3rd SS Panzer Grenadier Division Totenkopf. Between them, they fielded approximately 390 tanks and assault guns, including a precious allocation of Tiger is whose 88mm guns could destroy any Soviet tank at combat range. The Soviet defensive belts, 5 lines deep, with hundreds of thousands of mines, anti-tank ditches, and interlocking artillery, were designed to bleed the German attack to a halt. And they worked, at enormous cost to both sides. The Leibstandarte alone lost over 30% of its strength in the first 3 days of fighting. But by July 11th, the SS Corps had fought through the forward defensive belts. They stood near the town of Prokhorovka, and Soviet commanders recognized the danger immediately. If the SS broke through here, the entire southern defensive structure could unravel. Marshal Vasilevsky gave the order. General Pavel Rotmistrov's 5th Guards Tank Army, held in deep reserve precisely for this moment, would attack at dawn on July 12th. Not defend, attack. Throw the full weight of Soviet armor directly at the advancing Germans. It was a decision that would cost the Soviets enormously, and it would stop the Germans cold. The forces that met at Prokhorovka on July 12th represented the peak of armored warfare as both nations understood it. On the Soviet side, Rotmistrov assembled the 5th Guards Tank Army for its assault. The force included the 18th and 29th Tank Corps as the primary assault elements, supported by the 2nd Guards Tank Corps and additional rifle divisions. In total, approximately 800 to 850 Soviet tanks and self-propelled guns moved toward the German positions in the pre-dawn darkness of July 12th. The Soviet tank park was dominated by the T-34 Model 1943, with its 76mm gun, capable of penetrating German armor at close range, but outranged by the Tiger's 88mm at any distance over 500 meters. Rotmistrov understood this. His tactical solution was deliberate and brutal. Close the range to the Germans as fast as possible, get inside the effective range of their long-barreled guns, and fight at point-blank distance where the Tiger's range advantage became irrelevant. On the German side, the II SS Panzer Corps had been fighting for a week and had taken significant losses. Estimates of German armored strength at Prokhorovka vary between 210 and 273 tanks and assault guns, including a small but critical number of Tiger is, perhaps 15 to 20 operational, whose firepower was disproportionate to their numbers. The terrain favored neither side completely. The Sel River on the northern flank compressed the available frontage to roughly 8 kilometers. Anti-tank ditches and minefields from the previous defensive lines constrained movement further. Both sides would be fighting on a narrow stage with no room to maneuver. exactly the conditions that neutralized German tactical finesse and made Soviet numerical weight more effective. The Soviet attack began at 8:30 a.m. on July 12, following a 15-minute artillery preparation. Rotmistrov watched from his command post as the 29th Tank Corps, leading the assault on the right, advanced directly toward the Leibstandarte's positions. The sight was extraordinary. Hundreds of T-34s advancing in dense formation, engines roaring, commanders standing in their hatches to see over the dust their own tracks were raising, moving at maximum speed directly into the waiting German guns. The German commanders watching from their positions were initially stunned by the scale of the Soviet assault. They had expected continued defensive fighting. What they saw instead was an ocean of Soviet armor coming directly at them at speed. The first exchanges of fire were devastating for the Soviets. Tiger is engaging at 1,500 meters destroyed T-34s in rapid succession before the range had closed. German crews, trained for exactly this long-range engagement, fired with precision and confidence. The Leibstandarte's tank crews, veterans of 3 years of Eastern Front fighting, were lethal in this environment. But Rotmistrov's calculation proved correct. The Soviet tanks were moving fast, too fast for the German gunners to keep up with the volume of targets. And as the range closed from 1,500 to 1,000 meters, then to 500, then to 200, then to point blank, the tactical situation dissolved into something that no training had fully prepared either side for. At close range, the Tiger's long-range advantage became almost meaningless. T-34 gunners could penetrate Tiger side armor at 200 meters. The battle had ceased to be a tactical engagement. It had become a brawl. By mid-morning, the Prokhorovka battlefield had transformed into something that veterans on both sides would later describe as unlike anything else in the war. The dust raised by hundreds of tank engines mixed with the smoke of burning vehicles to create a near impenetrable fog across the entire battlefield. Visibility dropped to 30, 20, sometimes 10 meters. Tank commanders fought by instinct, firing at shadows, at muzzle flashes, at the silhouettes of vehicles that appeared and disappeared in the murk. Identification of friend and foe became nearly impossible. Tanks rammed each other, sometimes deliberately, when guns jammed or ammunition ran out. A T-34 commander whose gun had been disabled used his tank to ram a Panzer IV, locking the two vehicles together in a burning embrace. Crews bailed out of burning tanks and fought each other on foot between the wrecks with pistols and submachine guns. Aircraft from both sides dove through the smoke, unable to distinguish targets, adding bombs and cannon fire to the chaos below. Soviet losses were catastrophic. The 29th Tank Corps, leading the assault, suffered enormous casualties. By early afternoon, hundreds of T-34s were burning across the field. Some Soviet tank battalions lost more than 50% of their vehicles in the first 2 hours. The crews who survived described an inferno, the heat from burning vehicles so intense that the grass ignited across entire sectors of the battlefield. But the Germans were bleeding too. The Leibstandarte, absorbing the full weight of the Soviet assault, lost vehicles it could not replace. The critical difference was this: Soviet losses, however catastrophic, could be replaced. The 5th Guards Tank Army had reserves. The II SS Panzer Corps did not. By early afternoon, the German advance had stopped. Not because the Soviets had won a tactical victory, they had not, but because the SS Corps had been ground down to the point where continuation of the offensive was impossible. The Battle of Prokhorovka is one of the most mythologized engagements of the Second World War. For decades, Soviet historiography described it as a decisive Soviet victory, a heroic charge that shattered the cream of the SS Panzer forces. The historical reality, revealed in detail after the opening of Soviet archives in the 1990s, is considerably more complex and more sobering for the Soviet side. Soviet losses at Prokhorovka were staggering. The 5th Guards Tank Army lost approximately 235 tanks destroyed on July 12th alone, with many more damaged. The 29th Tank Corps, which bore the brunt of the assault, was effectively destroyed as a fighting formation in a single day. Overall Soviet armored losses in the broader Prokhorovka sector between July 12th and 16th may have reached 400 tanks or more. German losses on July 12th were considerably lower, perhaps 50 to 80 tanks destroyed or severely damaged, though more were temporarily disabled. The Leibstandarte Division, the primary German formation engaged, ended the day with more operational tanks than it had started with. having recovered and repaired vehicles damaged in the previous week's fighting. By any narrow tactical accounting, Prokhorovka was not a Soviet victory. The Germans inflicted more losses than they received. And yet, none of that changes the strategic outcome. The II SS Panzer Corps could not advance. Operation Citadel was cancelled the following day. The Soviet counteroffensives, Kutuzov and Rotmistrov, were already being prepared. The German summer offensive on the Eastern Front had reached its final, bloody limit on the fields of Prokhorovka, whatever the precise tank score said. The myth of Prokhorovka as a decisive Soviet tactical triumph belongs to propaganda. The reality of Prokhorovka as the strategic moment the German offensive died belongs to history. Behind the statistics and the strategy were the men who burned. Pavel Rotmistrov watched his army destroy itself against the German positions and later wrote that he had never experienced anything like it, not in 3 years of war. He expected to be court-martialed for his losses. Only the strategic success of stopping the German advance saved him. Years later, he would describe Prokhorovka as the worst day of his military life. For the crews inside the burning tanks, the experience was elemental. A T-34 hit by an 88mm round at close range would typically have the round pass completely through the hull, igniting the fuel and ammunition. Crew survival depended on seconds, hatches reached, bodies forced through narrow openings, the outside air replacing the wall of fire inside. Many did not make it. The burnt-out T-34s scattered across the Prokhorovka field each contained the last seconds of men whose names survive only in Soviet casualty records. On the German side, SS Panzer Grenadiers who had fought through the entire week of Citadel found themselves fighting not from the position of attackers, but of men holding their ground against an overwhelming tide. Soldiers who had entered the campaign with the confidence of elite troops found themselves, by July 12th, simply trying to survive. The Leibstandarte's War Diary for July 12th records continuous heavy fighting across the entire front, mounting casualties, and the weight of a battle that refused to end. The field after the fighting was a landscape from a nightmare. Hundreds of burning and burned-out vehicles across 8 kilometers of churned earth. Bodies of crewmen who had not escaped. The grass on fire in multiple locations. Aircraft wreckage from the air battles overhead. The temperature of burning ammunition and fuel raising the local air temperature to the point where approaching the wreck fields was physically dangerous. Survivors on both sides agreed on one thing. Nothing in their experience of war had prepared them for what Prokhorovka was. On July 13, 1943, Hitler summoned his senior commanders and canceled Operation Citadel. The news from Sicily, Allied landings on July 9th, gave him a convenient military justification. The real reason was written on the Prokhorovka field. The II SS Panzer Corps, the finest armored force Germany possessed, had been stopped. Not destroyed, it would fight again, in France, in the Ardennes, but stopped, bled, and permanently weakened at the moment it needed to be at its strongest. The Soviet counteroffensives that followed, Kutuzov on July 12th, Rotmistrov on August 3rd, demonstrated that the strategic initiative had permanently shifted. Orel fell on August 5th. Belgorod fell on August 5th. Kharkov fell on August 23rd. The front that Germany had held for 2 years collapsed over the following weeks and months, never to be stabilized again at any line close to where it had stood on July 4th. Prokhorovka today is a place of memory, a museum, a memorial. The tank hulks have long since been removed. Most were salvaged for scrap metal during and after the war. The field itself is peaceful, agricultural, utterly ordinary to the eye. But beneath that ordinary surface, literally in the soil, are the remnants of July 12, 1943. Shell fragments, track links, the microscopic traces of burned fuel and human remains that no recovery operation fully removes. Every summer, the wheat grows over the ground where 1,500 tanks fought, and the sunflowers turn their faces toward the same sun that burned through the smoke of the greatest armored battle in history. Prokhorovka did not end the war. It did not destroy the SS. It did not even produce a clean tactical victory for the Soviets. What it did was simpler and more absolute. It was the last place on the Eastern Front where German armor attacked with the genuine belief that it could win. After Prokhorovka, the Panzer never charged again.